In the vaulted silence of the galactic tribunal, you could hear the sound of hope dying. 72 species hovered or stood in tiers of radiant glass and pulsing gravity rings. The ceiling miles above displayed a holographic swirl of galaxies, each one blinking like a heartbeat in stasis. The chamber held beings who could speak across dimensions, terraform suns, devour planets, and yet none spoke now. At the center, one human stood on the obsidian platform of a dress, unarmed, alone, envoy. Lysa Ardenerth's final voice on the tribunal pressed her hand to her chest, not to calm her heart, but to keep it from breaking out of her ribs. Her breathing was shallow, like a diver beneath a deep ocean, and around her, the alien gaze pressed down like gravity, some curious, most cold. 1,000 lenses and nerve cluster eyes stared. Esteemed delegates, she began, her voice amplified by the intelligent air. You have before you the motion to authorize complete extermination. Protocol against the Kavari swarm. You believe they are a threat, that they consume without reason, that they are incapable of peace. She looked up. A Vakari general in burnished armor narrowed his slitted eyes, his mandibles flexing. On the upper ring, a Zelleri matriarch coiled her fluidic limbs tighter. Around her throne, Lysa's voice did not waver. But have we ever tried to communicate? Truly, have we sent envoys? Translated signals? Waited longer than 3 seconds before opening fire? The silence was worse than 1,000 objections. Behind her, the tribunal's holographic dais displayed the Kavari's recent expansions of stars lost to them in weeks. To the tribunal, they were locusts, inhuman, beyond reason, but Lysa had seen something else. They form hexagonal swarm shapes in defensive patterns. They respond to pulses of radiation. One swarm broke off when I broadcast a harmonic note from Earth's coral reefs. These are not random attacks. They are patterns, a kind of language, maybe even art. The air hummed. A J-car chancellor shifted. That was movement. Maybe even doubt. Lysa stepped forward, dangerously close to the edge of the platform. We humans know what it means to be feared for what others don't understand. We've been on the edge of extinction. We've made mistakes, gods, yes, but we've also learned. That's what we do best. She scanned the gallery, desperate to find even one face that might soften. I am not asking you to embrace them. I am asking you to wait. Delay the vote. Let Earth send a full contact envoy mission one last try before you wipe out what could be the galaxy's first contact with a hive mind civilization older than most of yours. Still silence. A dull chime echoed. The signal to vote, a scribe, species orb-shaped and covered in whispering feathers, rose from its nest throne and began the count. Lysa's voice cracked. Please, if not for them, then for who we are. Number. One looked at her now. A cold, mechanical tone clicked in from above. Vote recorded. Motion 8 to 19. Authorization of complete extermination protocol. Passed 72. Affirmative. 0 abstentions. A sharp thud cracked the silence, a crystalline gavel slamming down. Lysa staggered back, the finality hitting harder than a bullet. The tribunal's lights dimmed, shifting from neutral white to judicial blue, the color of death. Orders. Giant screens lit up with coordinated fleet movements, kill corridors, orbital patterns. Every species had already prepared. She had never stood in a quieter room. Even the air seemed ashamed. Behind her, the floor platform began to retract. That was the custom. Remove the speaker once the matter was resolved. She stepped down manually instead. Defying the motion, she passed Vakari guards with blades on their backs and ice behind their eyes. She passed old allies who wouldn't meet her gaze, but someone in the shadows whispered just loud enough for her to hear. Naive little mammal. Lysa didn't flinch. She simply walked on, out of the chamber of giants, their verdict echoing behind her like the sound of a coffin sealing shut. The doors of the tribunal chamber hissed shut behind her, but their silence followed Lysa, all the way down the crystalline corridors, like a shadow with a heartbeat. She moved quickly, but with purpose. Earth's diplomatic wing once nestled, with trusted species, and decorated in flowing banners of alliance now felt hollow. The lights were dimmer, the air colder, the flags gone. At the threshold to Earth's sector, 2 Vakari guards stepped into her path, clad in obsidian armor. With red glow sensor eyes, they blocked her with the casual threat of a predator, denying prey. One tilted his head slightly, mandibles twitching in amusement. "You walk fast for someone whose words fell like ash," he said in the Vakari tongue deep, clicking syllables designed to trigger fear. "I walk fast," Lysa replied calmly, "because I know what comes next." She pushed past them, brushing against the edge of one's weapon belt. They didn't stop her. They didn't need to. The message was already delivered. The moment she entered the Earth Embassy, the lights turned red. The AI voice of the diplomatic network crackled overhead. "Envoy, Arden, Earth Command, requests immediate debrief. Security level 8. Commencing. Scan. Security level 8. That was wartime protocol. Her mouth went dry. The hallway ahead was lined with Earth's remaining delegation, less than a dozen now. Some turned away as she approached. Others gave her clipped nods, as if afraid of being seen supporting her. Ambassador Karan, Earth's liaison to the Vakari, stepped out of a side room with a face like poured concrete. He didn't smile. "You just signed Earth's exile," he said. "They're calling it human empathy rot. We're being pushed out of every alliance corridor, every trade circuit. The Vakari have suspended military coordination." Lysa stared. "They want us afraid of being humane. They want us to know our place. We're the youngest species here, and the only ones with a reputation for hesitating. That makes us dangerous in the wrong way." She blinked. "Did you even listen to the transmission from that Kavari outpost near Cygnus? No one cares what monsters hum before they kill." She stepped closer. "But that's just it. They don't kill not. First, we've documented 11 encounters. In each one, they were reacting to us. Maybe we're not dealing with warm, maybe it's panic." Karan's jaw twitched. "The tribunal made its decision. You're being recalled to Earth. Immediately." "No, I can't. You'll comply." His voice was iron. "If you stay here, they'll brand Earth as a protector of threats. You've become a liability, Lisa." He handed her a clearance key. "Your ship departs in 6 hours. Get off this station before they make an example of you." The ship hangars of Tribunal Prime were a cold ballet of moving parts. Haulers, patrol craft, diplomatic cruisers. Lysa's personal vessel, the Lumen's Grace, waited near the edge of the launch ring, surrounded by invisible targeting fields. As she approached, her ship's pilot, an android with Earth-issue programming, tilted his head. "You are being tracked by Tribunal sensors, Envoy," he said without greeting. "Weapons not yet primed. However, your life expectancy is now at variable curve. Thank you for the honesty." Lysa entered the ship, paused, and turned back, toward the stars beyond the bay. She was supposed to leave quietly, obediently, but her words hadn't died. Something gnawed at the base of her skull, in her quarters. She activated a secure Consola forbidden communication frequency, known only to human diplomats. It bypassed tribunal filters. The screen flickered pixelated, and then stabilized. "This is Lysa Arden, Envoy of Earth. This message is not a political plea. This is for anyone with a soul." She stared into the camera. She would make them listen, if it was after she died. Halfway across the station, in a Vakari command center, Commander Threx paused mid-briefing as an illegal transmission pinged across encrypted combands. He opened it. The face of the human woman appeared dice-sharp with grief, voice low with steel. "You will regret this," Threx muttered under his breath. Then, to his aide, "Trace that signal. If she speaks again, we silence her." There was a moment, just a flicker in the galactic feed, when time seemed to hesitate. "Hey?" Human woman's voice echoed across hundreds of star systems, hijacking private networks, smugglers' relays, even the encrypted lines of high command. It broke through military-grade jamming. It bypassed tribunal sensors. No species had authorized it. None could trace it. But every species heard it. You call them a swarm, but they break formation when we sing. You say they're mindless, bet they've drawn constellations in dust. Who are the monsters here? On a mining rig orbiting a red dwarf, laborers gathered in silence around a flickering HOLO dot in the black market. Warrens of the Ulan nomads, children passed around cracked datapads to replay it. Even in the frozen dread vaults of the Vakari, senior tacticians watched without comment, expressionless. But Una Movian, it was Envoy, Lysa Arden, her face shadowed, her voice fraying but unbroken. She stared into the camera as if the galaxy itself was on trial. Aboard the Lumen's Grace, her small cruiser now adrift beyond tribunal space, Lysa finished the final upload. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't slept. Her pilot android had asked 3 times if she was aware of the growing number of vessels tracking her position. They were coming. And she had one last thing to say. I will not run. I will not fire. I will not hide. If this is the last voice of Earth, let it be truth. She tapped send. The system pulsed. It went out not as a signal, but as a ripple, coded in Kavari harmonic patterns and human linguistic base layers. It was more than words. It was a bridge. Then she leaned back, hands folded, and whispered to no one, please, let someone hear it. At that moment, in the command core of a tribunal dreadship, a crimson alert flared. Unauthorized transmission origin confirmed. The AI intoned. Ship Lumen's Grace, Human Registry, Envoy Class, Directive, Terminate Vessel. Scrub Trace. Suppress Memory. Vakari Commander Threx gave the order with a single nod. A strike group of 6 tribunal interceptors detached from high orbit, gleaming in war metal, and loaded with AI-piloted kinetic rounds. In deep space, the Lumen's Grace floated silent. Lysa stood in the observation deck, gazing at the Kavari exclusion zone ahead, a starless void, where the swarm had last been seen. It pulsed faintly in infrared, like something alive breathing in darkness. Lysa, her pilot said, voice tinged with caution. They will arrive in 68 seconds. We are unarmed. I know. You have time to escape. No, she said gently. I have time to finish something. She lifted a small recording device analog, ancient, gifted by her mother before departure. She pressed the red button. Message to Earth. Don't let silence win. If you find this, remember we were the only ones who asked why. She looked out again, toward the black. Her voice was soft now, and maybe they're not monsters. Maybe they were just hoping someone would stop shooting long enough to listen. The stars rippled as tribunal rounds screamed in. Her pilot made no move. Neither did she. Outside, the vacuum ignited with impossible speed, white-hot kinetic rods ripping through hull plating. One then another, then 5. From the Lumen's Grace. Nothing but debris remained. No beacon, no escape pod, just silence. But silence is not the same as absence. Lysa's final transmission didn't vanish. A rogue Zalari pirate vessel intercepted a burst fragment just 10 seconds long. They tried to sell it. It spread anyway. On the lower bands of Galnet, her words were decoded in every tongue, mixed with Kavari harmonics. Something new emerged. A pattern. Not human, not Kavari. Both. She had done it. A language born of 2 species that had never spoken, and one that had never stopped trying. The tribunal believed in control, in silence, in scrubbing voices from history before they turned into fire. But this time, fire had already taken root. Lysa Arden's last transmission, meant to vanish with her bones, was now more than a signal. It was a code, a spark, an idea that burned inside encrypted channels, through outlaw frequencies, and worst of all, inside hearts, on Galnet's lowest layer, deep beneath the official records, and polished. Propaganda, her voice played on loop. Don't let silence win. If you find this, remember, we were the only ones who asked why. It wasn't just a plea anymore. It was a challenge, and it was everywhere. Valkyrie Strike Commander Threx stood in a cold-lit war chamber beneath Tribunal Command, his mandibles tense as he watched the analytics feed spiral out of control. Over 1.2 million unauthorized plays in 17 sectors, his aide reported, spread across over 400 species. 7 were once loyal, he snarled. It's not a transmission anymore, it's a contagion. On the projection table, an AI-generated contagion map bled red across the Orion Spur. Worse still, someone had layered the human envoy's words with translated Kavari pulses. The playback wasn't just persuasive, was haunting. They drew constellations in dust. We were the only ones who asked why. Shut it down, Threx growled. Purge the feeds. Execute memory strikes if necessary. The aide hesitated. Sir, the public forums are resisting. We scrub 1, 3 more appear. Even military systems are being subverted. Then we find who's spreading it and we make an example. In the shattered gravity well of Station Drift 4. A band of species long thought disunited, now huddled in secrecy. Exiled Jakar philosophers, rogue Zelari, data scrawlers, a human coder who should have been on Earth by now. At the heart of their chamber, a pulsing signal orb, repeated Lysa's final words, each version translated not just linguistically, but emotionally. A Zelari poet wept as she whispered it. A Luroxi war priest clenched his talons. She died for something we dismissed, one said. She died without hate, another murmured. That's rare. Do we believe it? The human whispered. No, said the JKAR. We feel it, and we act. The rebel network lit up. A name was born. The Ember Accord in the upper tiers of Tribunal Prime. Chaos wore a dignified face. The High Triarchs convened in secret, towering ancient beings with minds encoded across machines and flesh. They had no mouths to speak with. They used pulses of thought light, visible only to species with neural wetware, and they were furious. The Kavari extermination protocol must proceed. Delay weakens the tribunal. The human envoy has sparked dissent across 3 sectors. We underestimated her death. Burn her legacy. Scorch every channel. Silence her name. But then an interruption. A 4th voice. Not a triarch. Not authorized. A rogue signal cut directly into the core feed. Lysa's voice again, this time woven with Kavari hums. Radiant and haunting. The tribunal speaks of order, but fears the sound of wonder. The feed fractured. Systems blinked offline. Hollas twisted into surreal patterns. Some triarchs lost neural cohesion for 0.003 seconds. Galactic eternity. Someone had planted her voice into the tribunal's own core. It was no longer a broadcast. It was a rebellion, down in the scorched outer rim, where stars die without witnesses. A single Kavari swarm shifted course. No fleet was near. No weapons fired. But the swarm broke from its path. Instead of harvesting the carbon-rich moons of Selene, it formed a ring around a human memorial beacon left behind by a rescue ship. The beacon was playing her voice. The Kavari stopped. For 21 full minutes, they hovered in formation, pulsing slowly, almost like listening. Then, quietly, they moved away. No blood spilled, no planets lost, just silence, peaceful, deliberate. Back in the tribunal's war room, Commander Threx stared at the report. No one dared to speak. The swarm had passed up a prime strategic target, because of a voice, because of her. He bared his teeth. They're changing, he whispered, and for the first time in his hardened life, he wasn't sure if that terrified him or gave him hope. The tribunal's first strike was swift and brutal. Within hours of the swarm's strange mercy at Selene, 16 independent com stations, broadcasting Lysa, Arden's message, were incinerated. not disabled Orestes, if the ground beneath them had never existed. Tribunal purifiers moved like shadows. Their message was clear. Lysa's voice would not become a firestorm, but it was too late. At the edge of known space, on the hollowed bones of a dead moon, the first ember, Accord conclave, was held. There were no flags, no speeches, just a flickering shard of her final words projected onto a wall of cracked stone. Dozens had gathered, species that once swore oaths to never again share breath. A Luroxy ex-marshal, blind in one eye, spoke first. She spoke not only to her kind, he growled. She spoke to us all, Evan, those who devour instead of ask. A Neelan code priest stepped forward, neural glyphs glowing across his neck. The Kavari did not fire. That alone breaks centuries of assumption. They heard her. Others argued, feared, whispered of what might come. But in the shadows, someone was listening. Vakari Commander Threx had deployed 3 assassins to infiltrate the Accord. None returned. He watched the footage from one of their helmets. The last seconds showed a blur of motion, impossible speed, and then claws, familiar, brutal. He narrowed his eyes. Pause, he said. The image froze half-formed shadow, luminous eyes, curved horn crest. He recognized it instantly. Kryn. The name echoed in the command chamber like a war drum. Kryn of Clan Ashwaquents, the Vakari's fiercest planetary enforcer. Exiled after defying an order to annihilate a medical colony during the Kavari incursion. She vanished, rumors claimed. She'd taken a human crew into her protection. Now she was back, and siding with the Accord, far beyond tribunal reach. In a cave lined with old war banners and Kavari relics, Kryn stood before the fledgling members of the Accord. Her armor was scarred, matte black with red bloodlines etched across her shoulders, each a fallen comrade. At her side was a datapad, playing Lysa's final transmission on repeat. She died unarmed, Kryn said in her gravel-thick Vakari tongue. She died not begging, but warning, and still, your tribunal burns her words like plague. The Luroxy marshal stepped forward. You'd side with humans. They called your people monsters for decades. Kryn's mandibles flared. They called me worse. But she didn't. She tapped the datapad. She saw what we would not, and for that, I will walk through flame. Silence. Then a ripple agreement nods, a spark igniting. Back in Tribunal Prime, the sensors were losing control. Dozens of systems went dark for moments at a time, data overwritten by musical patterns that were neither human nor Kavari, but a fusion. Military ships began detecting ghost pings in their nav systems, whispers, encoded with fragments of Lysa's voice, impossible to scrub. Don't let silence win. Threx issued an emergency directive, hunt the Ember. Accord to extinction. Allied species were commanded to withdraw. Diplomats from Earth, and any outpost sympathetic to Lysis's legacy. But something was shifting unexpectedly. On the fringes of the Endari Belt, a fleet of Kavari swarms paused their harvesting patterns. Instead of moving forward, they created a symbol in orbit, a constellation in dust and debris, the same one Lysa had described in her speech. This time, it was seen, recorded, shared. Even the tribunal couldn't stop it. In the Ember, Accord, cave, the symbol appeared on the holomap. Lysa's voice echoed softly through the chamber. Maybe they were just hoping someone would stop shooting long enough to listen. The silence that followed wasn't from fear, it was reverence. Kryn stood, eyes glinting. They're listening. The tribunal dreadship, Verax, drifted through black space. Like a cathedral of death, its armor plates, etched with execution codes, its hull wreathed in kinetic launchers. Inside its heart, a vault sealed tighter than any prison. And inside, that something, even more dangerous than weapons. Truth. Kryn of Clan Ashwake stood on the hull of her stolen assault shuttle. Magnetized boots clinging to the metal skin as she stared at the glowing monster ahead. Below her, The Ember Accord strike team waited in silence. A voice buzzed in her ear. 10 minutes to interception, whispered Rion, the human pilot who once fled tribunal territory for refusing to bomb a refugee moon. We're ghosts. To their sensors, but not for long. Kryn's claws flexed around the handle of her blade. We only need 3. Inside the Verax alarms hadn't sounded yet. The crew moved in predictable patterns. Vakari enforcers patrolled in 3s. Automated drones circled like birds of prey. The tribunal never expected a breach. Why would they? Who would be mad enough to storm a dreadship with a team of outlaws? Only those with nothing left to lose. The strike team moved like smoke. A blind Zellery slicer whispered code into sealed doors. A Luroxy war priest offered prayers to dead moons. Kryn led from the front, a towering shadow who no longer bowed to orders, only to conviction. They reached the vault in 5 minutes flat. Here it is, Rion breathed. The Kavari section, restricted archives. Level 9 clearance. Kryn placed her palm against the scanner. The lock hissed but did not open. Then, something happened. The scanner blinked and played a sound, a low-pitched harmonic tone. Resonance. The team froze. Was that? Rion whispered. Kryn nodded. Lysa's voice used this pattern. The Kavari signal language. She must have understood more than she let on. She placed her palm back. This time, she hummed deep and steady, echoing the same tone. The vault opened. Inside was a single data core, floating in magnetic suspension. No guards, no defenses. Kryn stepped forward and accessed the interface. A hologram flickered to life. Archived Kavari behavior patterns, intercepted swarm songs, and most damning of Ola Tribunal. Transcript. They watched in stunned silence as the tribunal's own words scrolled across the air. The Kavari did not initiate hostilities. First contact attempt failed due to human weapons fire. Secondary response was defensive, not predatory. Subsequent aggression was shaped by misinterpretation of resonance. Potential exists for co-sentient communication. Risk level. Philosophical destigmatization. Rion took a step back. They knew all this time. They knew the Kavari weren't monsters. The war was a lie, Kryn growled, and they killed her because she confirmed it. Suddenly, alarms screamed. Movement Sector 7, shouted the Zelari. They know we're inside. No way out, the way we came, Rion said. Too many troops. We're not here to run, Kryn snapped. We're here to ignite. She grabbed the data core, shoved it into her armor's relay port. Send it, now. Everywhere. Even if we die. Kryn's eyes flashed. Especially if we die. Outside, across hundreds of systems. The message dropped like a burning comet into the datasphere. The tribunal had lied. The Kavari had tried to speak, and humans had fired. First, worse still, the swarm had stopped fighting after Lysa transmission. They had understood her. Within an hour, the story reached 3 billion beings. Within 2, half of them believed it. Back on the Verax, the team fought to their last breath. Vakari troops flooded the corridor. Rion was hit. The Zelari sliced until his fingers bled. The Luroxy priest roared his last rites as he fell. Kryn stayed standing, covered in blood and fire. She triggered her armor's final function, an overcharged pulse detonator built into her chest plate as the tribunal soldiers surrounded her. She looked into their cold visors and spoke her final words. You can kill me, but you already lost. She made them listen. The blast turned the corridor into light. Far away, in the orbit of a silent world, a Kavari swarm paused again. This time, they sang, and the pattern in their song. It matched the very resonance Kryn had used to open the vault. It was not random. It was not mimicry. It was a reply. They weren't supposed to respond. Not the Kavari. Not the ancient star-eating planet-breaking swarm whose existence had shaped policy, war, and myth for centuries. And yet across the dying sky of Zilith Prime, under a broken aurora set. Kavari clusters emerged from void space, no weapons armed, no ships fired. Instead, they sang a harmonic pulse, a layered symphony of frequency, vibration, and low-range light that painted the heavens like stained glass. Billions watched from their cities, billions more tuned into the relay. The Kavari weren't attacking, they were mourning, in a bunker beneath Earth's Geneva sector. President Elena Voss stared at the translated waveforms, Lysa Arden's vocal signature filtered, preserved, and rebroadcast by the swarm was embedded in their song. "Dear God," she whispered, "they aren't mimicking her, they're honoring her." The Unicom generals shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am," one of them said, "if the Kavari are sentient and we provoked them first, our entire war history collapses. Everything we've built was built on a lie," Voss finished, quietly. Her aide stepped forward. "The Ember Accord is growing. Dozens of member worlds are declaring neutrality from the tribunal, and Earth's population is split. Split. How half want peace, and the other? They want to strike first, before the tribunal turns on us." Voss stood in silence, the weight of legacy and consequence wrapping around her like chains. On Tribunal Prime, chaos reigned. The leak of the Kavari truth had not only weakened morale, had turned factions against each other. Entire subsects of tribunal loyalists demanded a purge of Others resigned, fled, or joined the accord in secret. Strike Commander Threx punched a Holotable into sparks. "Who let this get this far?" A young Vakari officer stepped forward, hesitant, breathing hard. "We have another problem, sir." "What?" Now, the officer looked down. "Some Kavari are broadcasting location codes." Threx's eyes widened, as in inviting contact. "Yes, sir. They are requesting dialogue." "No." He stepped back. "They shouldn't be capable of that." But they were. And they weren't just mimicking, they were evolving. Out on the edge of the Varelian dust fields, a rebel listening post picked up a new Kavari transmission. This one had no pattern match in any archive. It wasn't just a song, it was language. 3 pulses, 1 pause, then 7 short bursts. Then silence. The Accord's new Kavari linguist, an exiled J-Carrion named Vesh, began deciphering it. "It's not a warning," she whispered. "It's a memory." "What kind of memory?" asked the operator. "A memory of her." They ran it through a translator algorithm. Lysa's last words shimmered in alien resonance. "Don't let silence win." The message continued beyond what she ever said. "We hear you now. We remember the gentle one. We see light in your voice." Earth's skies filled with silent protests. Cities glowed with candles. Children held up signs shaped like the Kavari's spirals. Veterans of the war gathered to lay down medals at the foot of Lysa Arden's shattered statue. The people were speaking, and for the first time, the swarm was listening. Back. At the ruins of Station Drift 4, an Ember Accord envoy ship approached the Kavari orbit. No weapons, no shields, just trust. As they closed the distance, the Kavari did not scatter. Instead, they shaped into a spiral, mirroring the pattern of Lysa's Earth birthmark, an ancient symbol of infinity. Inside the envoy ship, Rhiann barely healed from the vault. Raid stood beside Kryn's preserved helmet. "Let's find out," he said quietly, "what she really started." He activated the diplomatic channel. The swarm responded instantly with words, this time, not in any known language, but in a new one. Half human, half Kavari, on 1,000 worlds. Screens lit up as the first bispecies transmission played across public channels. "We remember her voice. We wish to learn more. We do not want war. We want to speak." The feed ended, and the universe held its breath. Meanwhile, in the hidden chambers of the tribunal's core, the final Triarch stood alone. The others had fled or gone silent. She gazed at the crumbling projections of order, authority, and silence. And then, for the first time in 200 years, she spoke. Let the humans decide their place. They made this possible, and they may also end it. The stars were quiet, not silent watchful, above the red-gray clouds of Varnes 3, a planet once raised by tribunal fire. Two fleets faced each other across a ribbon of space no wider than a city, but as deep as history itself. On one side, the Ember, Accord ships, cobbled together by rebels, exiles, and survivors. Their hulls bore scratches from 1,000 escapes, and the symbol of Lysa's spiral burned on their cum towers. On the other, Tribunal Command Fleet Theta, gleaming and brutal, an empire's last shield, and between them, drifting in the tension of it all, a single Kavari swarm, motionless, shimmering like molten silver, not advancing, waiting, in the Accord flagship. Rion sat in the command chair, breathing shallowly. The decoded Kavari message pulsed across the console in real time. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a demand. It was a question. Do you wish to speak with us, or return to silence? The tribunal fleet had jammed every known frequency. But the swarm wasn't using frequencies anymore. They were speaking through resonance. Gravity modulation, subtle shifts only a few had learned to hear. Lysa Arden had heard it, and now, so could they. On Earth, President Alina Voss stood before a live global feed. This is our choice, she said to billions. Not the tribunals, not the Kavaris ours. She took a breath. They want to speak, not surrender, not apologize, speak. And Lysa gave her life, hoping we would answer. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with conviction. Today, humanity votes, not with weapons, with will. What we decide becomes our legacy. In the tribunal war room, Strike Commander Threk smashed his final override key. Enough, he snarled. Burn the swarm, burn the Accord, burn their symbols and songs. But the remaining Triarch did not respond. She was gone. Only silence answered him now. The tribunal had fractured, and in that fracture, a choice emerged. Out by 3. Rion keyed the command channel. His voice crackled across the tension. This is Captain Rion Tess of the Ember Accord. We receive your message. The Kavari swarm pulsed once. Ships turned slightly, like petals shifting toward sun. Rion continued. We've made too many mistakes to ask for forgiveness. But we're here. We hear you. Another pulse. Then, a transmission arrived. One not just heard, but felt. The voice was low, tectonic, unmistakably Kavari. We remember the gentle one. She sang before silence. We ask, will others sing? Rion glanced toward the memorial plate etched with Lysa's name on the wall. She believed we could. He closed his eyes and sang not well, not loud, but true. A low humming matching the tones Lysa had deciphered. It filled the cabin like mist. Across the Accord fleet, others joined. Different species, different voices. They answered. The Kavari shimmered like a mirror struck by wind. Then slowly, they moved, not to attack. They danced, formations of shimmering. Light arced across the stars in spirals. Not a weapon or reply. And for the first time in recorded galactic history, humans and Kavari communicated not with language, with understanding, with resonance, with hope. And just like that, the war ended. Not with a treaty, not with surrender, but with a song. Months later, the new Concord formed a multi-species council, unaffiliated with the old tribunal. Earth took a seat beside the Luroxy, the Vakari defectors, and even Kavari, envoys translating through light and harmonic structures. Children across planets now studied Lysa Arden's message in school, not as a warning, but as the beginning. The galaxy had changed. Because one human spoke when she was told to stay silent. Because one Plea ignored in the moment refused to die, back on Selene Station. Rebuilt from debris and renamed Arden's Edge, a statue now stood where Lysa had once made her final broadcast. It showed her with one hand, raised not in fear, not in protest, but in greeting. Beneath it were her last words. Carved in every major language, And in the Kavari spiral script, "Don't let silence win." And beneath that, a newer edition written after the swarm began to speak. She was the first to sing. The end.